me, it's like the people who come into this space and who create really great things in their businesses and who potentially connect and partner together and do collaborations and stuff. But it's about the people, bottom line. And I love the idea that somebody who, a journalist, somebody who potentially is working for a brand that maybe they won't work for forever, whatever, has an opportunity to build a brand for themselves. Mm-hmm. I love how you related it to this IMDb page, because I think for people who don't know, that's the page that people in the entertainment industry, right, use. It's kind of like their online resume type of page, right?
Yeah, it just kind of keeps track of everything. So if if on IMDb, if you click to a movie that you were interested in, you'd have every single cast member in the film. You'd have interviews and pictures and dates, and it just kind of is this one spot where you can kind of have all the information you would be interested in knowing about that film in one place under one roof. And the advantage to us is that having these pages, those are really good for search engine results. And so that becomes a way that we generate traffic, is by every time you search an article headline, which is rare that you would search an actual headline, but you will search an author name or an outlet name. We want our rating page to show up pretty high in those search results.
Oh, wait, you think it's rare that people will search a headline?
A headline, yes. A topic, no. So, for example, if we took the General Soleimani airstrike of the Iranian general, you might search Soleimani airstrike, but you're probably not going to search an exact headline. Right. So we don't hit the article search results very well, but authors and outlets, we want to be really high up. Mm-hmm. And again, that gets back to kind of the culture that Credder's trying to create of accountability, because if you're an author and now whenever people search your name, they get your Twitter and your blog, and one of the third or fourth search results is your Credder rating page, well, now you kind of have to pay attention to it.
Right. So what stage are you guys at Credder? When I went on today or yesterday, I see that it's the beta version that I was looking at. Was I looking at the wrong version?
No, you're looking at the right version. In fact, we're thinking about taking down the term beta. We really use it more as a way of telling our users to get used to the fact that we're going to be rolling out changes, and that, features are going to be updated, and to kind of not think that we're at the final product, because we're always adding to it. We know we're approaching that perfect product market fit, but we need our users to know that changes are going to be rolled out on a week-to-week basis.
I mean, I think that it's a good idea. If you're there, if that's where you are still, I understood it to be that, right? When I see beta, I'm like, okay, it's new. I mean, I knew it was new anyway, but in fact, I remember when we first met, it was still tribe-worthy. But it does give me that understanding of like, oh, this is a new thing that we're, and it's also kind of a new concept in this particular application, right? So maybe it gives me more incentive to be patient with the fact that, oh, it's different today than it was, 3 weeks ago or whatever, because something came out. But you just said something I can't, now I'm all these things, you got all these little nuggets coming out. I'm like, oh, I got to touch on that. I will ask you this. So, again, I'm just going to throw this out there, and you're probably going to roll your eyes at me, but I'm the person who will subscribe to like the Skim or something like that. And here's why. And I know you probably want to throw up in your mouth right now.
No, we like the Skim.
I like the Skim. I do feel it's bite-sized unless I want to dig deep on a particular thing, which I know there's a lot of platforms that do that. It does it with a sense of humor. So the delivery is something for me. And then I'll dig deep. I will say that at some point, I almost feel like I'm never going to get to the real, dry version of it. It's always going to be, tongue in cheek every time I dig a little bit further. Because usually, I think, as you click further and further into, on the Skim, for example, it's rare. Well, you have to click multiple times to actually get to the original story.
Probably because they don't want to send you away from their site.
Exactly. Yeah. They're smart. They're doing it smart for themselves. But so sites like that, I think there are a few others. So you said you like the Skim. Do you feel like, can I feel confident that I'm getting the right story from them?
Let's see. I don't really speak to, I haven't been on the Skim in a while. I say I like it because we appreciate anybody that's trying to make news gathering more efficient. And they do it in a playful way, and they don't take themselves seriously, which is also kind of our brand, which we think is the right brand in news, which is don't take yourself too seriously, but take the work you're doing for the consumer seriously, because that breeds trust, and ultimately we're all in the trust game.
Yeah.
So we like the skim for those reasons. They've innovated on, how quickly you can get a reader informed. And ultimately, that's what Credder's trying to do for the consumers, is be able to send you directly to the best article on any topic and make news consuming much faster and more efficient.
And so you're doing this kind of in a crowdsourcing way, right? You're doing it by people. The more people who are using Credder, the more reviews you're getting, the more, in theory, just like Yelp, we hope that you're getting credible reviews.
Yeah, so I kind of coined the term crowd-contested media. There was no term for what this was. People were calling it like crowdsourced reviews of news. That's not really a category. So we kind of had to name the category, and we came up with crowd-contested media. And the reason we're similar to Rotten Tomatoes is that we have two ratings. We have a critic rating, which is comprised of verified journalists who are reviewing. Those are journalists that we hand verify, make sure that they're all real people and they are who they say they are. And then we have the public category, the public rating, and that can be made up of anybody that, is online and wants to review content. So it's very similar to Rotten Tomatoes in that way. And if you, for whatever reason, don't trust your fellow news consumer, or don't trust you think that the ratings are going to get gamed, even though there's a lot we do against that. But if you don't trust the user category for whatever reason, you can just look at the critic rating and lean into that.
So let's take a step back to the night that you woke up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, this has to be a thing. And you wrote it in the dark. Obviously, you wrote it so you could read it the next day. And because you have an entrepreneurial background, both academically and otherwise, somebody who's laying there and who has an idea like this to me seems like a big thing to bite off. It's not a little business. You're gathering news from around the world. You're trying to create a database of information that everybody can consume. What do? You wake up. I want to know, what happened.
You want to know that actual day?
I actually do.
Okay. And then I'll tell you a little bit about how I think an entrepreneur or a wantrepreneur can approach this. They have an idea and how they should kind of think about it as a checklist, because there's a way to do that. The day that it happened, it actually wasn't one of those middle of the night things. I was going back and forth with my eventual co-founder, because we were thinking about this other concept. My kind of thing, my interest is always in flipping incentive models and ideally financial incentives for the better and for social and economic change. And so what I was looking at was, okay, we have a lot of people who are blind, numbingly just scrolling through platforms and feeds like Instagram and Facebook.
Right.
How is there a way that we could have them opt into a version of that where every sixth post was an advertisement, but now their time scrolling is actually building up monetary value that they can then donate to a charity? So this was an earlier concept that we were thinking about called Slide Social. The idea being that you could actually be donating to your favorite causes just by scrolling through images and videos with the occasional advertisement, and you would be able to pick how many advertisements you want to see in your feed. So if you're one in every 6, 1 in every 20, the more advertisements you're willing to put in your feed, the more you're actually donating. And so we're trying to create this because a lot of people's problems with donating is, well, I am poor, I need the money, so how can I give it up? And then what's I'm not going to get any feedback on that too. But really it's I need that money, I can't give it away. So we're trying to create a free way for people to donate to causes using this kind of new feed dynamic. That ultimately, the financials of that didn't work, so we didn't go with it. But some of the people I was talking to about it said, I know you want to do something good, but what is the problem that is bugging you the most in the world? And so I was sitting on that for a day, and that's when I was the media, the times I get the most frustrated is when I'm reading something that's trying to pass itself off as journalism, and it's either a PR piece or it's just something that is trying to smear someone. It's just really bad journalism. That, for whatever, it frustrates me the most. And so had that concept, and then called up my co-founders and said, does this exist? Is there a way where news consumers work together to review content and, help surface the best content and hold media accountable? And again, then we searched and didn't find it. But for the entrepreneurs out there, I think that step one is when you identify your concept, whatever the idea is, you should create a checklist of the assumptions that are involved in it. So, for example, if we're using Credder as the example, I would say, question number one, will people review the news? Like, that's the number one assumption, right? If people aren't willing to review the news, you don't have a news review site. So that's one assumption. Number two, is there a way to, when you review the news, hold the author and outlet accountable? Is there a way that you can make those reviews kind of aggregate up to the authors and outlets? And then you just go down this checklist. Is there a way to make money through this venture? And the answer might be no, but and that might be a viable nonprofit. But you want to go through these checklists and you want to check all your assumptions. Am I the right person for this and why? Can I tell a compelling story about this? Is there a narrative this? Is this the right timing? Has this been tried before and there's a graveyard of other companies here and I'm being unrealistic about how I'm different or what my approach is that's going to make us the ones that are successful? So for the entrepreneurs, make that assumption checklist. And then when you actually go and talk to investors, you'll end up finding that is the checklist that they have in their minds. They want to know that you've proven out every assumption that underlies your business. So, for example, hey, Chase, really? A news review site? Will people review the news? Well, we've got thousands of users who are doing it. Okay, but will the reviews be, useful and helpful? Yes, actually, let me show you some of the reviews and the scores because the reviewers review themselves, actually, or review each other. And then will they produce accurate scores? And will you be able to attribute them to the authors and outlets? Yeah, here's the technology that we built that enables that. So it actually tells you in order, like what you need to do as a company, what you need to focus on. And if you can check all those boxes, you can go raise money against that concept.
Right. So that's interesting that you say that because yes, there is a, and it's kind of where I was going with in my head before I asked the question is like, there's the moment you have the idea and even the moment when you create this checklist in your mind, you think the answer is yes to all of these, right? Then there's a period of time in which you have to build something because you're not going to go to an investor usually. I mean, this has happened, but usually you don't go to an investor to write a check for an idea. You have to have something behind it.
Yeah, that's a total misconception.
So like you have to build something. You built thousands, you built something in which thousands of users could give you at least a foundational bit of information and the reviewers and that type of thing. So for you guys, for Credder, what was the period of time between when you first went through that checklist? Here I have the idea. Here's the checklist. We think everything is yes here. And then you built something to take to an investor. Yeah. I'm assuming that you've taken to an investor.
Yeah. We've raised our angel fund and as well as a following bridge fund now. We thought it was going to take a year. And this is the other thing that entrepreneurs should know is that everything takes longer than you think. But, if you're serious and you're passionate and you manage your resources and don't overextend yourself, then you have time. Like there's always time. Time is your asset, but also the resource that you're constantly burning. But when you don't have money, you have time.
Yeah.
And so we thought it was going to take a year. We moved into Petaluma here, grabbed an apartment all together, and it ended up taking 2 years. One, because we just had one developer, but also because we're all working full-time jobs elsewhere, and so that we wouldn't have to take money out of the company. Another thing I would suggest doing, which is keep your job, make this your side hustle until you've proven out these assumptions and built something compelling enough to go raise money against.
Right.
Don't make it your full-time job until you raise that money. So it took 2 years before we had enough of those boxes checked, enough product, so that we could show, not tell, and actually go raise some money.
And during that 2 years, were there moments in which you're hustling and you're in the back of your mind, you're like, shit, we got to do this quick because somebody else is going to do it. It's so obvious. Like for me, when you get into a project and you're like, oh my God, this is my world. And it becomes so obvious and so a part